Okay, I'm going to click update here. It was at 26,000. The price to beat is 31,070. Hi, and welcome to Grails to Astonish. About to get started on day 2 of ComicLink's Summer Featured Auction. These are the books from C to M in the alphabet. Last night we had the first batch of books, Action Comics, Amazing Spider-Man, all the way through Captain America. Now we got the second batch. They're closing. They've already started closing. I skipped the first few books, the last of the Captain Americas, some Captain Marvel, because the first book that I wanted to talk about was Crime Does Not Pay 24. I talked about this in the preview. Now I'm going to watch the bidding close on it. This is a cover I'm not fond of. I already talked about why I'm not fond of it. What I am finding, and sort of already knew, is that the books with really boundary pushing covers are the ones that people are still interested in. And here we go with 10 seconds left and a fair market value of $8,750. This book is already above fair market at $9,160. Let's see what it closes at. $9,719. So there is still pre-code horror that is pushing upward in the fair market values. A lot of these books, a lot of Silver Age stuff is coming in about, I would say, 15% below fair market. And a lot of this pre-code horror is as well. But the ones that are going for above fair market are consistently the ones with shocking covers. And they can be shocking and upsetting for a variety of reasons. Some of those reasons I think are fine. This one, not so fine. Nevertheless, here we are. This book closed for almost $1,000 above fair market value. And then we get into SuspenStories, which was a major title in the crackdown on pre-code horror. These books were some of the books that were held up by the Senate. Not only do they have covers by really, truly fantastic artists, and they are shocking covers, but they are of historic First Amendment value. Coming up in a minute and a half, SuspenStories number 6 with a hanging cover. SuspenStories 20's hanging cover is the one that was more featured in the 1950s, more a part of that controversy. So that one's going to go for more, even though it's in lower grade. This one is currently at $2,002 with a fair market of $3,800. And then if we scroll down a little bit, we'll see Crime Suspense 20 in 5.5 condition, currently bidding at $2,600 with a fair market of $1,800. So this one's already well above fair market. This one has not hit fair market, and it's closing in 20 seconds. Let's watch this one close. It's a 9.4 cream to off-white. There we go, cream. People don't like paying fair market for cream pages. So this one's going to come in low with 5 seconds left. 4, 3, 2, 1. 2,317. So it went up a couple notches, but still sold for about 65% of fair market. To my point about these EC horror books, where I don't really care about the grade too much. There's always a 9.8 copy because there's always the Gaines file copies. You're not pursuing having the best copy unless you've got the Gaines file copy. These EC horror books, they look better when they're all crumpled up and nasty, in my opinion. This one, not so much. It's mid-grade, 5.5. Somebody out there clearly wants it. In fact, several people clearly want it because the bidding closed at $2,600. So yeah, it closed at 40% above fair market. Big demand for this one. And then this one's already closed. SuspenStories 22. This is a very important book for the crackdown on pre-code horror. Fair market on this one was $20,000. It's a 7.5. This came up in the hearings with William Gaines trying to defend this book. He did a really bad job of trying to defend and justify this book being on newsstands. And it was really probably more than any other single comic book, this comic cover that resulted in the crackdown on comic books in the 1950s and the institution of the Comics Code. The bidding on this right up to the close was $18,777 with a fair market of $20,000. This one closed at $18,777 below fair market, not much below fair market. Crypt of Terror 18. This is the issue before they transitioned the title over to Tales from the Crypt, which is their flagship title. This is the 9.8 Gaines file copy, so it's going to go for a lot. This is a key EC horror book. Bidding was at $7,605 with a fair market of $9,800, and it closed at $8,261, about 15 to 20% below fair market. Then we got Daredevil number 1, 9.6 off-white to white pages with a fair market of $105,000. Now, this one I predicted was going to go down. I thought it was going to sell for below $90,000 because the fair market establishing sales occurred 4 years ago, and the $90,000 sale was in 2022, and we've gone down from 3 years ago. So I anticipated that despite the fair market being over $100,000, this was going to sell for well below that. And let's see what happened. It closed at $96,000. It did close for below fair market, but not much. I don't think it's going to go to fair market of $105,000. I think it's more likely to be $90,000 or lower. So Daredevil's still got some interest from collectors. And the bidding was split on this one because it was 9.4 white pages. White pages are, of course, more desirable, and the fair market on this one was $38,000. So arguably a much better buy as long as you don't need to have the top grade. 9.4 white pages, I think, was going to go for at least book value, and it sold for, nope, I'm wrong. 31,000. Nope, 36,000. Just closed for 36,000, which is practically fair market value. It was 38,000 as fair market. This was just a hair below, 5% below fair market. And that can be attributed to the white pages. Yeah, and looking at the cover here, there's some yellowing on this 9.6 cover that does not show up in the photos for this 9.4. This is clearly a better looking cover. From these pictures, I'm going to say the 9.4 was the one to bid on, and it sold for $60,000 less than the 9.6, but a bit closer to the fair market value than this 9.6. There was also an 8.5, and the fair market on this 8.5 was only $11,500. Only $11,500. The bidding had been at $8,950, and it just closed at $9,100. So that's about 20% roughly below fair market. So all of these are closing below, some less far below than others. This 9.4 came the closest. This was about 5% below fair market. This was 10% below fair market. And this one was closer to 20% below fair market. Then we have the 9.8. Daredevil 2 at 9.8, a perfect copy. Last sale of a 9.8 was 8 years ago on ComicConnect, and that sold for $44,629. So really before the pandemic bubble. The bidding for this one was at $38,500, and it closed at $47,899, a new record sale for Daredevil number 2. It had been a long time since there'd been one. And now we have, I mean, there may be higher sales that aren't reported to Go Collect, but this appears to be, for all I know, an all-time record, the most ever paid for Daredevil number 2, which is not really a key. Electro's the villain. These early Daredevils, aside from issue 1, there aren't a lot of key books, but this is a 9.8 copy. And then we had a 9.6 white pages, which, just like Daredevil number 1, the lower grade book has the white pages. That copy had a fair market value. The last sale was in 2021. Near the center of the pandemic bubble, it sold for $11,200 on ComicConnect. Should be lower than that now. We're down from 2021, but it was white pages, and the bidding had been at $8,250, and it sold for $8,650. So a pretty good deal on a 9.6 white pages below fair market, and somebody just paid $47,899 for the 9.8 that wasn't even white pages. I would be much happier paying $8,600 for a 9.6 than almost $48,000 for a 9.8. I crunched a lot of numbers on the Silver Age Marvel books to see what the jump should be between 9.6 and 9.8, and I found that it was on average about 175% jump, just below 200%, meaning just below triple the price. So as a quick rule of thumb, the jump from 9.6 to 9.8, you can triple the prices and then come down a little bit. That's about where it should be. We got this 9.6 at $8,600. Triple that would be $2,580 to about $26,000. Come down a little bit from that, and you're at about $24,000. So this 9.8 probably should be around $24,000, but it sold for $48,000. I think they paid too much for it. We got the Daredevil run, Purple Man in 9.4. I used to have this Stiltman book. I just like the cover. It's Wally Wood. Wally Wood was an alcoholic, and he had been doing well during the pre-code horror days, but was really struggling for work and down on his luck in the 60s. So his old friends who had found work at Marvel kind of threw him a bone and put him on the Daredevil books. He drew this great cover for Daredevil, which is kind of a joke cover because Stiltman is considered kind of a silly villain. But as an illustration, I think it's great work. Probably not his favorite stuff to draw. Nonetheless, he did it. And this one sold for $2,400. In 9.6. I sold my 9.0 with ComicLink not too long ago. Wow. How about that? Fair market of $1,250, and it sold for $2,400. If somebody shares my appreciation for this cover. Then we got Daredevil 16, which I talked about because this is John Romita's audition for drawing Spider-Man. He wasn't yet put on the Spider-Man title. Steve Ditko is still doing it, but Stan Lee knew Steve Ditko was going to bail, so he was trying Romita out. Right over here, I got Romita's first Spider-Man cover. He's not wearing the mask in this, so you can't quite see, but you can see how he drew the suit, and his style for drawing the suit in Spider-Man was a little bit different than what he drew on this Daredevil cover. I think he refined it a little bit. It looked nicer. And then later on in his legendary run on Amazing Spider-Man, this is how he drew Spider-Man once he'd sorted it out. And so this is the Romita edition. I don't think it's considered a key by anyone. It's just interesting for that reason. This is a 9.4 copy. Has a value of $5,250. Bidding was at $2,107 and it closed at $2,669. Did I read that right? I did not. Fair market value is, it's 9.4. Fair market value is $3,100. And it closed at $2,669. So once again, we have a book closing for approximately 20% below fair market. And that's it for Daredevil. Oh, okay, we got the Detective Comics. We're closing on Detective Comics now. So I just missed Detective 1. The fair market for this was impossible to determine. I thought maybe somewhere around $20,000. This is a heavily restored copy of Detective Comics 1, the first DC comic, sort of, in extensive C5 restored 0.5 condition. Still a very nice looking cover. Nice in the sense that it presents well, but is also totally racist. It's a racist depiction. Please don't argue with me on that. It is. It's a racist depiction. So the bidding was at $11,250 and it just closed for $17,500. So I put it around $20,000, not too far off. This is a very low price to pay for a Detective Comics #1, of which there are only 34 copies. Then we've got a couple more pre-Batman detectives, 20 and 25. These just sold for $45.07 and $9,900. But now we're really getting into it. Now we're into the Batman Detective Comics books. And the first one is the biggest that's going to go for the most. This is an unrestored 4.5 copy of Detective Comics 33. Now, it's not entirely unrestored. They gave it a blue label, but it does have, there's a note here, small amount of dried glue on spine. I don't know where the threshold is for CGC in deciding whether that's restored or not. I have had books that had some glue on them marked as restored. But this one, they kept the blue label, which made it a whole lot more valuable. This book was bought 2 years ago from Golden Auctions for $46,360. 2 years later, the buyer is now flipping this book. This is a weird book to flip. So having just bought this book for $46,360 at one auction house, they're now selling it at a different auction house. The bidding was at $35,500. Let's see if they recouped the money they spent. $42,507. So the seller lost a little bit of money. We know they paid $46,360 for it. They sold it at ComicLink, which offers the lowest commission rate that I know of only 10%. With a sale price of $42,000, ComicLink's going to take $4,250 of that, giving the seller about $38,000, having bought it for $46,000. So the seller lost some money on this book. They said they lost about $8,000. All right, we're 1 minute away from the really, really big book. I talked for a long time about this book in the preview video. This is Detective Comics #40, which is called the first Joker cover. It's not the first appearance of Joker. That happened a month or two earlier in Batman #1, but then they put him on the cover right away of Detective Comics #40. This is signed by Jerry Robinson, the co-creator of Batman, the Joker, and Robin, and he says this is Joker on the cover, so he'd know. This is also the first appearance of Clayface. There's supposedly a Clayface movie or TV show in production and development, so that's going to add some speculator interest on this book. This is a 6.5 unrestored signed copy of Detective Comics #40 with a population of only 73 books, a fair market value that I put at $41,000, but that's for an unsigned version. This is a signed version. Closing in 2 seconds. We got the bidding at $29,000. Let's see if anybody's swooping on this one. Yep. $38,777. So a little bit lower than the fair market listed a 6.5 at. This was an off-white copy. There are only 3 unrestored copies of this book. This is not going to be in that population of 3 because this is in the signed population. So there's 3 unrestored and I think just 1 signed. We're all left to argue about whether or not this is actually the Joker because it doesn't look anything like the Joker. When Jerry Robinson signed this cover, it would have been nice if he took that silver Sharpie and drew a little arrow to the Joker and said, this is the Joker. That would really settle it. Then we got Detective 42, which just closed. That's not one I was tracking, but it's a nice cover. This looks like a Batman cover to me. The Batman covers are more stylized, a little more cartoonish. This one kind of belongs in the Batman series rather than the Detective. It's in 6.0 condition, so the fair market on that is $5,750. This one just closed. The bidding was at $4,301 and it closed for $4,301. More than 25% below fair market value for a really nice early Detective cover. Then we got a Detective 46, where Batman's slapping some guy in the face and Robin is doing I don't know what with his thighs to the other guy. Robin has a unique fighting style. We'll leave it at that. Detective Comics 54. This is, to me, a straight lift of the Detective Comics 33 cover. Yeah, let's scroll back up to the 33. This is Detective Comics 33. This is essentially a reused layout. Pretty good grade. Unrestored 8.5. $9,250 fair market. And it closed for $7,927. Once again, about 15% below fair market. Oh, closing in 5 seconds. Detective Comics 62, the first real Joker cover. Fair market is $10,000 for this unrestored 7.5. The bidding was at $6,555. What did it close at? $7,300. Wow. Wow. I talked a lot about how Joker covers always go for above fair market. There's always huge demand for Joker covers. This is a huge one. There's the Detective Comics 40 cover, which is technically the Joker, but he doesn't look like the Joker. This, I'm pretty sure, is the first Joker cover where he is clearly the Joker. Not as good, in my opinion, as Batman number 11. That's the best early Joker cover, but this one came first. And I thought for sure this would beat fair market. But it didn't, not even close. Fair market of $10,000. This sold for $7,300. That's really surprising. Really surprising. This was a good buy for whoever got it. And then we've got the first Two-Face cover closing in 25 seconds. This one has a higher fair market of $14,500. Two-Face is not on the cover unless that guy's Two-Face. And it's not Harvey Dent. It was Harvey something. I think it was Harvey Kent. And then they changed it to Dent because obviously you can't have a character in DC Comics with the last name of Kent. We already have one. So this was the Harvey Kent Two-Face. The fair market's $14,500. Bidding's at $12,250 and it closes for $17,550. Way above book value. That was a huge last second spike for that one. I predicted the Joker was going to go for way above book value and this Two-Face was going to go for below. I was completely wrong. Somebody got this Joker cover for $7,300 and somebody else probably paid $17,000 for this Detective 66. I know which one I'd rather have. Then we got this first Penguin cover, issue 67 in a very high grade, 7.5 condition. Fair market's $14,000. The bidding was at $8,451 and it closed at $8,751. Wow. That is so far below fair market. It's still higher than this Detective 62. Still would have rather bought this one for sure. But this went for about 15% below fair market, 13% below fair market, probably in part because the bidding was split. We got this 4.5 as well, which I think looks significantly worse. Maybe it was photographed poorly, but it looks very dark. It looks like this is a very faded cover. This is closing in 3 seconds. 3,400 and it closes for 3,400. This is a much better copy. I'm still stuck on this Detective 62. I can't believe this sold for 7,300. I think it was just missed. I think a lot of collectors who would have wanted it were not tracking this auction and would have bid higher than this 7,300. Well done, whoever got this book for $7,300. It's probably the best buy I've seen so far in these auctions. We got some Joker covers. Detective Comics 109. Joker's laying some bricks here. It's an 8.0 copy. There are no recorded sales at 8.0. There's 7 in the census with a population of 146 books, but no recorded sales. However, the 7.5 is 3,000. The 8.5 is 4,400. So we can split the difference. I would put an 8.0 at about $3,600. That's probably about where this should end up, but everything's going for about 10 or 15% below. So 15% below 3,600 is going to be $3,060. Right now it's at 2,500. Let's see if it beats $3,060. 20 seconds left to go. 2,600. It's creeping up. That might be the final bid. 10 seconds left. Final 5 seconds. And 0 seconds. It closes at $29.50. I was $110 off. Then we got another Joker cover, which is going for much more. That's because this is in a 9.2 grade, off-white to white pages. We got 118. I've never looked this one up before. Actually, never seen this cover, but it's the Joker. And this is, who's the artist on this? It's a Dick Sprang cover. Different from this guy. This is a Jack Bursley cover. Burnley. I much prefer how Dick Sprang drew him. Fair market on this at 9.2 is $7,000. We got the bidding at $5,300 and it closed at $7,927. Okay. I'm going to put that on the way Joker's drawn here. This is the Dick Sprang style of the Joker. This went for above book value, which we have not seen a lot of. And then we've got the first Catwoman cover. Kind of interesting that Catwoman was introduced in 1940, but did not appear on the cover of any issue of Batman or Detective until 1947. This one's graded by CBCS 3.0, so we're not really going to get the right value from looking at CGC grades. We can see the CBCS. 3.0 in CGC would be $3,100. This is closing, it's at $1,811, closing at $2,000. Well below, like 35% below fair market. CBCS, we do have one sale for a CBCS at $2,880, and that was earlier this year. I wonder if it's this copy. 0010892. Yep, it's this copy. Okay, so we have this very, very same copy selling at Heritage Auctions in January for $2,880, and the person who bought that 7 months ago just sold it on ComicLink for $2,011. Whoops. 200 of those dollars goes to ComicLink. So they lost over $1,000 on this book, having flipped it in a very short time. Comic book flipping is not a good profession to be in. You want to make your money back on comics, buying and selling them? Be patient. Wait like 10 years or more at least, because you got to cover the difference on these commissions at the auction houses. You're going to have to go through an auction house of some kind or another to find the people who are willing to pay high prices for these books. And you're going to have to pay those auction houses a commission. The best I've found is ComicLink with 10%. So buying an early Detective, you're going to want to sit on it for a decade or two at least, or you just keep it. Pass it down to your kids. And then we've got Detective 168, which is an origin of the Joker. It is one interpretation of the Joker's origin. Again, graded with CBCS. This is the story behind the Red Hood, who it is revealed in the story becomes the Joker. It reveals how his face became white with green hair from the falling into the vat of acid. If I recall correctly, this is a very sought after book. Relatively low population. So in CGC, the 3.0 would go for $6,250. And this one sold for $7,400. So this 3.0 CBCS sold for way above CGC's fair market. I don't think we have any track sales in 3.0 for CBCS. We do. We have one. It sold at the peak of the pandemic bubble for $9,000 from Heritage. So this is not that sale. We're down a bit, but not that much. $7,400. I don't want to be like a CGC snob. It's just when you have a key book, you want to get the best price for it. You get it graded with CGC. In any case, CBCS versus CGC. Any case is fine. It's a great book. All right, we're closing in 1 minute and 10 seconds on Famous Funnies 209. Famous Funnies, this is a series that goes back to the very beginning of comic books in 1934 with Famous Funnies number 1. We're not talking about Famous Funnies number 1, though. This is issue 209, and it is the first Frank Frazetta Buck Rogers cover. I don't even think it's his first work in Famous Funnies. It's not his first published work, just his first Buck Rogers cover, and he went on to do a bunch of Buck Rogers, but that's not even really what he's known for. He's known for Conan and fantasy paintings that he did later on in his career that really established his look and influenced so much of not just Conan, but fantasy in general. It's in 9.6 off-white pages. The fair market on this is very high, considering how well known it is. There's no 9.8 copies, so it's the highest graded. Fair market's at $20,000, largely because of a sale in 2023 on Heritage Auctions. In fact, entirely because of this sale. Prior to that, it had sold for $3,200 and $5,175. So there was a $20,000 sale for a pedigree copy that went very, very high. This is not going to go that high. It just closed. Bidding was at $8,750 and it ended up at $9,219. Less than half of fair market, but fair market was overinflated from that Heritage sale that was clearly way too high. Still a good price for that book. But now we're moving into Fantastic Four, and we're going to be here for a while. They got a lot of good FF books in this auction. The FF movie is still technically in theaters, although movies don't stay in theaters for very long these days. Everybody who wanted to see it has now seen it, and the rest of us are waiting for it to show up on Disney+. 52 seconds, we've got Fantastic Four #1 coming up. Here's FF #1 in 4.0. I talk about that book all the time. They've got it here in 5.5 off-white. And the fair market on that 5.5 is $29,000, but we know it's going down. 15 seconds until it closes. The bidding's at $19,000. Is it going to go up? I think it's been there for a while. Is it going to go up in the last 10 seconds? Should I hit the update button or should I wait? I'm going to wait 5 more seconds. We're going to wait till it closes and see what happens. And it did not. It didn't move. $19,000, well below fair market. So that's going to knock the price down on my 4.0 if this gets reported to go collect, which it may not. So there's 65 copies in 5.5. It shot way up to a $48,000 sale in 2022, but the last sale was $27,000 on Heritage, $29,000 on Golden. This is way down from that. I don't see anything wrong with this book. It's off-white, but it's not cream or brittle or anything like that. So this is just a remarkably low sale price for this book. Fantastic Four prices are going down after the movie came out. Here we got another 3.5 Stan Lee signed copy. But as I said in the preview, if you're going to have Stan Lee sign a comic, it should be Fantastic Four #1. The bidding was at $10,261 for the 3.5, and an unsigned 3.5 fair market was $10,500. So this is going for basically fair market. $10,569. So this one did okay. This one did terrible. Yikes. And then we got Fantastic Four #2, one of the most interesting books in the auction. This is a very rare book. It is the last 10-cent Marvel book. It's a Fantastic Four book, but it looks like an Atlas book from the 50s. They hadn't established the Marvel Silver Age style yet. When did the Marvel box show up? The Marvel box shows up in Fantastic Four #14. So all these first 13 issues don't have the Marvel box in the upper left corner, and this one was even still 10 cents. This is a 9.4 white pages copy. There are only 9.4 copies, and there are 4 in higher grades. Let's see if there is a 9.8. There's one 9.8, 3 9.6s. This is one of the 9 9.4s. The fair market on this was $78,000, but it was $78,000 because of a peak of the market sale. There's a $78,000 and an $84,000 sale, both on Heritage, both in 2022 when prices were sky high. We know we're coming down from that, but it still should be quite high. And it was. The auction just closed at $41,000. I can't remember what I predicted this was going to go for. I knew it was going to be less than $78,000. It'll go probably in the 40s or 50s. Prices are getting back down to probably where they should be now that the speculation has died down. This is a great FF book to own. Now, as for one I'd really like to own, we've got FF3. I'm going to just go ahead and call it my favorite FF cover. Their first in-costume cover in their first version of the Fantasticar. This is a beautiful copy. 9.2 off white to white and 9.0 off-white. The bidding on the 9.2 is $19,169 with a fair market of $30,000, and it closes in 5 seconds. Is it going to go for that far below fair market value? Let's see. Yes, it did. $19,169, 30% below fair market. That's what I'm seeing consistently. These books so far, the early FF keys are going for 30% below their listed fair market values. We got another one about to close in 20 seconds. The 9.0 is bidding at $14,000 with a fair market of $17,500. So this is already closer to fair market than the other books we were looking at. Closing in 5 seconds. Let's see what we got. Do we have anybody swooping? Probably not. Nope. There aren't even bidding wars on these books. You saw earlier in this video, there's a lot of books that have buyers swooping in the last few seconds. That's not happening with these FFs. Then we got Doom. Oh, please, Doom. Don't fail me, Dr. Doom. Fantastic Four #5 in 5.0 off white to white. I have Fantastic Four #5 and 5.0 off white to white right here. I bought it last year. I really hope this goes for more than what I paid for it. Oh, and look, it has. Fair market on this is $7,250. We're already above fair market, as we should be. They are off filming Avengers Doomsday right now. 2 seconds until closing. Is it going to go for above $74.62? No. It closed at $74.62. That's still well above what I paid for it. I'm feeling okay about that. The first of these FF books to go for above fair market value is issue 5, and that may be the only one we see of all these FFs, because this is a book with a bright future in the MCU. And then we got FF6, which is the second appearance of Doctor Doom. Not as exciting, and this is only an 8.0. Fair market on this is $3,600, and this is closing at $3,200, below fair market again. Then we've got issue 7, issue 8, issue 9, not too interesting, issue 10, Fantastic Four number 10, third appearance of Doctor Doom. Fair market value at 9.0 is $2,700. Bidding's at $2,100. It's about to close in 15 seconds. I think Doctor Doom possesses Reed Richards in this one, and Reed Richards gets stuck in Doctor Doom. And then in the bottom left corner of this, we got Stan and Jack watching. How's this for a twist, Jack? We've got Doctor Doom as one of the Fantastic Four, and Mr. Fantastic himself is the villain. Our fans ought to flip over this yarn. This one closed for $2,200. Once again, 500, we got about 25% below fair market value. But if anything is going to save this Fantastic Four auction, is either going to be the issue 5, which we just saw go for above fair market, or this issue 12. Issue 12 in 9.4 white pages with a CBA label on it. That means that they sent it to CBA, paid a little bit of money for CBA to say, hey, this is a really nice looking cover. It presents well for the grade that it's in. And this is in 9.4, so it's a pretty good grade. So this book is closing in under a minute. The bidding is significantly higher than Fantastic Four number 1, which we just saw at 5.5. This is probably the highest sale price for any Fantastic Four comic in the auction, except maybe 55. We'll see about that one. $36,519 with a fair market in 9.4 of $36,000. So this is already a little bit above fair market. The bidding split because we've also got a 7.5 with a fair market of $3,300. That one's almost at fair market. So there's interest in this issue 12. I just bought my issue 12 raw, probably a 1.5 copy. I got it at a convention. Closing in 10 seconds. Is anybody going to bid it up above $36,519? We're already above fair market. We got a sale for $36,000 3 years ago. Peak of the pandemic bubble. We're still at pandemic bubble prices with this. Did it close any higher? Yes, it did. $39,529. They've gone 10% above fair market value on this book. This is a very high grade copy of a very hard book to find in high grade. There's no 9.8s. There are only 3 9.6s. These early Fantastic Fours are all pretty low populations. Only 1,900 copies. Fewer copies of Fantastic Four number 12 graded than there are Fantastic Four number 1. I know I have a raw one. That could change. There are a lot of ungraded Fantastic Fours floating around, but it's still a low population book for the Silver Age. This next one, as I said, the fair market was $3,300. It was at $3,177. Did not go above $3,177. So this one closed below fair market. Then we got issue 13 closing in 8 seconds. This is one I spent a lot of time on because there's only 3 9.6 copies, and I found a fourth one, but we figured it out. I talked to ComicLink about this. We figured out the mystery is solved. One of the 3 other 9.6 copies had been cracked open probably, and they sent in the label. You can send your old labels of cracked books to CGC, and they will remove it from the census, so you don't have an artificially high census on books. That is why there are only 3 listed. This seemed to be the 4th, but there are still only 3. That 9.6 probably was, the owner was trying to get an upgrade to 9.8, and that's why they cracked it open. But this one had a fair market at $22,000. Bidding was at $19,000. And it closed for $21,500. So this almost reached fair market, almost matching the 2024 Heritage sale of $22,200. You subtract the 10% higher commission that Heritage gets, and these prices are almost exactly the same. $21,500, that's a healthy price. This 9.2 off-white to white had a fair market of $11,500. Bidding was at $7,600. And it closed for, again, well above fair market. So there's demand for this issue 13. Issue 13, both copies closed for above fair market. And we haven't seen that much with these Fantastic Four books. I don't know what to chalk that up to. I mean, it's the first appearance of the Watcher. It's the Red Ghost who was supposed to be in the Fantastic Four movie. John Malkovich played the Red Ghost in the Fantastic Four movie, but it got cut out of the final cut of the movie that was released into theaters. Maybe we'll see the John Malkovich performance of the Red Ghost someday. It sounds like he did it as a favor to the director who he'd worked with before. That is a big name to get for a very minor character in a Marvel series. Also, kind of a waste of John Malkovich. You'd think they'd use him for something better. The issue 13 sold for good prices. The issue 12 sold for good prices. These other ones, not so much. We saw good prices for issue 5. 12, and 13, all of which I own. And then disappointing prices for issue 1, issue 3, pretty disappointing price for issue 2. That's pretty much it for Fantastic Four keys until we get into the 40s when Stan and Jack had another legendary run. They created the Inhumans, Galactus, Silver Surfer, and Black Panther all in a stretch of about 7 issues. So we're going to get there in a few minutes. Issue 25 and 26 I'm very fond of. That's the rematch between the Thing and the Hulk. And then issue 26, we bring in the Avengers. So it's got the Fantastic Four, the Hulk, and the Avengers, kind of a mini Secret Wars from the Silver Age. This is the second Silver Age appearance of Captain America. He appeared in Avengers issue 4. He showed up again the following month in Avengers issue 5, but Fantastic Four 26 hit newsstands before issue 5. So this is Captain America's second Silver Age appearance. Doesn't go for much in spite of that. This 9.2, let's look quickly at issue 25 and 9.2. The fair market's $3,400. It's already above that at $3,700. And issue 26 and 9.6, fair market's $4,900. We're already above that as well at $5,000. This is white pages. This is off white to white. These books are both beating fair market even before the final minutes. I don't know why that is. That's surprising. It seems some other collectors are as fond of these two issues as I am. So we're going to see issue 25 close in less than 2 minutes. We saw some high prices for these books that I wasn't really tracking. We had Fantastic Four issue 16, which is a Doctor Doom cover that has Ant-Man in it. One of the top 5 graded in 9.6 white pages. So there are 1 or 2 9.8s, but this is an almost perfect copy and it sold for a very high price, $13,240. Whoa, $19,629. I got to look that up. Holy macaroni. Fantastic Four 16 and 9.6. Not a lot of tracked sales. The last one was in 2021 for $13,200. And this one shot up way past that to $19,629. It seems like people are looking for Dr. Doom keys, but they don't want to buy issue 5. Buyers would rather get a very, very high grade Dr. Doom cover from later in the series than a mid-grade copy of his first appearance. His first appearance just sold for $7,000 and somebody just paid $19,000 for his 4th or 5th appearance in 9.6. To each his own. I'd rather have the first appearance at any grade than this nice looking cover. We got issue 25 closing. It just closed. And we got issue 26 closing in 14 seconds. So issue 25 in 9.2 should go for $3,400 and it closed for $4,259. Issue 26 just closed this second. The bidding was at $5,000 and the fair market is $4,900. So it was already above book and it sold for $9,778. Wow. That is a big, big jump. It's so nice to see that somebody else loves this cover as much as I do. I love Fantastic Four 26. I have a bunch of copies of it. I've owned a couple and sold them, never for very much. I've never bought them for very much. I've never sold them for very much. Mine were in the 7.0s and the 8.0s. This one is 9.6. Even at off-white to white, almost twice the fair market value, which was $4,900, but this one sold for $9,778. That is a huge, huge jump. I can't remember, but I think in this whole auction, we've only seen 1 or 2 books go for that far above book value. And this is a book that it's a relatively high population book where there's a lot of certainty about what it's worth. So it's really interesting to see it spike that high. Fantastic Four 29 just closed and I watched the price on this spike. It was bidding at about $3,000 and then it closed for $10,149. It was a 9.6 off white to white pages with not a lot of sales, no 9.8 copies. And the last 9.6 sale was in 2018 for $4,063. Previous sale, $7,100. The highest sale, $7,768, which was back in 2012. No reason to think this book would go for a lot, but it did. It's got the Watcher on the cover. I've always thought the cover of issue 13 was kind of disappointing because it doesn't show Uatu on it. And I kind of wish that this cover for 29 was the cover for issue 13 or something like it with Uatu in the background. Sold for $10,149. That is 2.5 times the fair market value. In 30 seconds, we've got Fantastic Four 39 closing. This is another Doctor Doom cover. It's a really good Doctor Doom cover. I just picked it up at a local comic shop a couple weeks ago in mid-grade condition for $50 or so. But this is a 9.6. Off-white to white, 5,250. The bidding is at 3,500. It just this second closed. Let's see what it closed at. 63.91. All right. Doctor Doom covers are consistently going for above fair market value, which obviously they should be, but the issue 5, the really important one, didn't go for that far above fair market value. It went for a couple hundred above fair market value. These other ones are going for way above. So people are speculating on the higher grade, deeper in the run Doctor Doom covers, and they're paying high prices and not worrying about being above fair market because they know the Doctor Doom books are going to go up. For $63.91, you almost could have bought the first appearance of Doctor Doom in 5.0. I keep harping about this. Closing just this second. Just closed. Okay, this is the first appearance of the Inhumans. I did not think this was going to go for very much. It is a 9.6 white pages. Fair market of $13,000. I didn't think we were going to get anywhere close to that. When I was looking at this before, the bidding was at $4,499. It just closed at $12,867. Basically, fair market value for this Inhumans key. So it's holding its value. This 9.4 with a fair market of 3,800 is closing in 5 seconds, already above fair market value. For this 9.4 white pages, 4,200. So this sold for almost 10% above fair market value. This sold for just below fair market value. There is interest yet in the Inhumans. I don't have any, but somebody out there does. Now we've got 4 copies of issue 48 closing. First closes in 18 seconds. Fantastic Four 48, The Coming of Galactus, in 9.6 off-white to white, has a fair market of $33,000. When I looked at it before, it was only bidding at $5,600. Now it's bidding at $17,166 in the final seconds. Let's see what it sells for. And update, nothing. $17,166, almost half the fair market value. Galactus has come. He showed up in the Fantastic Four movie. We got all the Galactus we're ever going to get. There was a bad Galactus movie 17, 18 years ago. We finally got a good Galactus movie. It happened. It's over. The excitement has died down on that character. And the Silver Surfer. We saw the Silver Surfer in the MCU. I thought she was great. I'm not particularly eager to see more. Maybe in the Secret Wars, Avengers Doomsday. Could be, but I don't think people are that eager for it. These books are not selling for high prices. It's kind of like what happened with Avengers 8 a couple years ago when Kang was booted out of the MCU and those prices crashed. This is a little bit different because we actually got the movie and it wasn't terrible. It just wasn't. Fantastic Four 48 9.2 off-white to white. Fair market was $8,000 and it's closing for $5,500. Similarly, not quite as far down, but similarly low. Then we got one signed by Joe Sinnott in white pages. Now I'm guessing this one's going to go for, it did go for more, not because of the Joe Sinnott signature. He was the inker, I believe, on Jack Kirby's work in the Silver Age. There aren't a lot of Jack Kirby signatures. You do see some Joe Sinnott signatures. He signed this in 2018. He stuck around quite a while longer, but really it's the white pages that are probably behind the higher price. So once again, we've got probably about an 8,000 fair market with a signature. Bidding was at 6,333 and it closed at 6,533. Still well below fair market. Not as bad as these other two. Then we got an 8.5. Fair market on the 8.5 is $3,600 and it closed at $3,550, $50 below fair market. Maybe people have been watching my videos and have heard me talking about how there's a ton of high-grade copies of FF48 because of the warehouse find and they are overvalued. The super high-grade copies of FF48 are not getting high prices. The lower grade copies are coming close to fair market value. Now we're at 49. This is a 9.6 off-white to white with a CBA label for whatever that's worth. Fair market value on this 9.6 is $20,000. And this is a weird one where the fair market's all over the place. 9.8 is at $190,000. 9.6 is at $20,000. 9.4 is at $17,000. These do not correspond at all to the ratios that you generally see in these three grades. With a 9.6 at $20,000, the 9.8 should be at $55,000. And the 9.4 should be at about 12,000. The 9.4 is way higher. The 9.8 is way higher. We're looking at a 9.6. It's off white to white, and it hit exactly, nope. It went up at the last second, 21,500. So this went a little bit above fair market, which is interesting because we saw this 48. Interesting. We saw this 48 at 9.6 go for half of fair market. And we saw this 49 at 9.6 go for almost 10% above fair market. And that is interesting because it used to be that 49 was the higher value book than 48, and things have swapped. 48 became the more valued key over 49. This 9.6 actually sold for less than 49. For a time, FF48 was going for triple in the same grade what FF49 was going for in these high grades. We're seeing that flip right here. This 9.6 of 48 went for 17,166, and this 9.6 of 49 went for 21,500. It's kind of returning to where things were, I don't know how long ago, 10, 20, 30 years ago. The bidders in this auction clearly more interested in 49, and there were only 2 copies of it. This second copy of 49 in 9.4, 17,000, which is much too close to what the 9.6 goes for. This could not get anywhere near the fair market value, and it didn't. 10,950, final bidding at 12,376. That's about where the 9.4 should be. Then we got issue 50, which just closed. This is at 18,000. Issue 50, the fair market was 19,000. This is a white pages copy. I wish they hadn't done a brown background. I wish they didn't put Human Torch Goes to College in the bottom right corner. I wish it was just a straight Silver Surfer cover like Silver Surfer #1 is. This book would be much more valuable. This is a 9.6 white pages, fair market of 19,000, and it closed for 20,000, a little bit above fair market. So 49 and 50 are seeing more interest than 48 is. 48 for the last few years has been the book people wanted. This was the sought after book, but there are 9,000 copies of it and far fewer of 49 and 50. So it's nice that we're seeing more attention put on these other 2 books in the trilogy that are less abundant. The Black Panther keys, I'll go over them quickly. Issue 52, first appearance of the Black Panther. We got a 9.2 and an 8.0. The 9.2 fair market is 8,000, and this bidding was at 6,300. It closed at 6,500, so about 20% below. And the 8.0 fair market was 1850. This closed at 1655. Again, about 10 or 15% below. And then we got 55. Now, 55 is a really interesting one. This is the single highest graded copy of Fantastic Four number 55 because it's in 9.9 condition. It was graded in, I think, 2002 or 2001. Very early in CGC. They were giving out 9.9s at that point. They stopped. I think we can all agree, without taking too close of a look at this book, if it were cracked open and sent back into CGC for another grade, which would be insane, but were they to do that, it would get a 9.8 because they don't give 9.9s to Silver Age books almost ever. I can think of one other that I know of. This is the second 9.9 Silver Age book that I'm aware of, and the only 9.9 of a Fantastic Four in the first 194 issues. So this is closing in 52 seconds. The bidding's at $26,000. Fair market on it for what it's worth. It sold once on Heritage in 2015 for $31,070. So the question is, and this is probably the person who bought it in 2015 who is selling it now. They bought it on Heritage. They're selling it on ComicLink 10 years later, hoping to make some money, having held the book for 10 years, which is what you should do. I saw an Amazing Spider-Man 194 9.9 sell yesterday, and I nearly fell out of my chair. And, oh my God! Here we got another 9.9. It's not a first appearance like Amazing Spider-Man 194 is, but it is a Silver Surfer cover very early in Silver Surfer's run. It's the third Silver Surfer cover. Okay, I'm going to click update here. It was at $26,000. The price to beat is $31,070. Wow. That was quite a jump. It shot from $26,000 to $65,555. Owner bought it for $31,070. Up until 5 seconds before the auction closed, it was looking like the owner was going to lose money on this book. This is one of the only 9.9 comics from the Silver Age, single highest graded copy of Fantastic Four number 55. Whoever paid $65,555 for this paid for the label. They paid for a label that says 9.9 because, please, CGC, Matt Nelson, somebody, tell me I'm wrong about this. If you got this comic today, if somebody cut this out of the case and sent it to you, would you give this a 9.9? What's the difference between a 9.8 and a 9.9 really? There's some tiny little crack on every other 9.8 copy. How many 9.8s are there? Okay, there's 5. There's 5 9.8s. if we laid out the other 5 9.8s of Fantastic Four 55, do you think a CGC grader could point to a flaw in each of those 5 books that made them 9.8s instead of 9.9, and then show that there is nothing in this book that dings it down to a 9.8? Probably not. Probably this is a result of shifts in the grading methods. Early on, they gave 9.9s and then they stopped. That's why this book has a 9.9. There's plenty of 9.9s out there now. They're just all Copper Age and later. They're mostly modern books. You almost never see the Silver Age. And I wonder if CGC has gone back to giving 9.9s to Silver Age books. I doubt it. I'm not even going to look too closely at the scans on this book. It would be fun to find a flaw in this book, but I doubt there is one. I'm still catching my breath. 65,000. The owner of this book must have just had a minor heart attack watching that happen, but hopefully they're opening a bottle of champagne right now and celebrating because they doubled their money. Whew.